Good day, good night, and welcome to Off the Woodworkx post-game show. I'm Kevin Laramie, and today we're going to talk about the Montreal Impact draw on the road versus FC Dallas, 2-2 versus the Dallas team. Yes, of course, it was a disappointing result when you look at the game itself, but of course, if you would have said 2-2 draw in Dallas, do you take it? I'm like, what? Montreal's going to score in Dallas? That's something we haven't seen in about 6 years, I believe. So sure, but once again, in the game itself, expectations change, and we're seeing Maxi Urruti, the goal scorer, change everything for the Montreal Impact. And of course, we'll talk about it in a couple of minutes. We'll talk about the game itself. Let's start by traveling back in time and looking at Thierry Henry's starting lineup for this second game in Major League Soccer for the Montreal Impact in 2020. Unbeaten so far in Major League Soccer with a win versus the New England Revolution 2-1 last week at the Olympic Stadium. The starting 11 for this game: Anthony Jackson Amel starting the game up top. Boyan with a last-minute muscle strain, injury, discomfort that's still up for a debate. Maybe it was preventive, looking at Tuesday's CONCACAF Champions League game that we will preview later on today's show. Anthony Jackson Amel starting the game as a striker for the Montreal Impact. We'll talk about his performance later on, how he fits into this scheme, and how the play changed and how Montreal's changed during the game. Putting Okonkwo in his spot did change and create opportunities for Montreal that we saw, that they finished later on in that game. But let's continue. Kyoto Urruti, that's been quite a mainstay so far for the Montreal Impact. Kyoto Urruti on the flanks of the attack for Montreal. Corrales as a wingback on the left side. Zachary Broguillard on the right side. Titer and Samuel Piet as your defensive midfielders. No Wanyama in this game. Will he be available Tuesday? I think that's a good possibility. Apparently he's very fit, and it's just a question of getting accustomed to this team and receiving the famous ITC, the International Transfer Certificate. Louis Binks, Rod Fenny, and Joel Waterman as your backline, and Clement Diop making a second Major League Soccer start for the Montreal Impact, a 4 consecutive start in 2020, and then you had last year. It's a few about 12 games now, I believe, or so, if we add the last of the regular season and the different games that he played last year for the Montreal Impact. I think it's actually 10 games straight for Clement Diop as goalkeeper of the Montreal Impact, which is a surprise. We'll see if Evan Bush gets his shot later on in the next couple of weeks, because the calendar does get a bit congested for the Montreal Impact, but we'll get there in a minute. So this was your starting lineup, and it wasn't easy. The first half for the Montreal Impact, they had to absorb the pressure. Barrios was having a heck of a time in the midfield of Dallas, attacking Montreal. Montreal was able to defend, absorb, of course, concede a couple of looks, but nothing quite dangerous. One big save by Clement Diop in the first half that kept Montreal at a 0-0 scoreline, kept them in the game, and that would lead to be very impressive later on. But let's talk about later on, and let's talk about the leading scorer in Major League Soccer right now, Maxi Urruti, as we're talking on Sunday afternoon. That might change by the end of the night, but Maxi Urruti was able to score twice against his former team. His first brace since 2017 for Maxi Urruti, and the way he scored the goals, and you're seeing here the great play by Zachary Broguillard, and the deflection of defenders of Dallas led to the chance and the goal by Maxi Urruti. The second goal also a bouncing ball, and they found their way. Same for a couple of goals also. The second goal of Dallas came from a panic moment, so no pretty goals in this one. I guess Andrzejczyk's header, the first goal for Dallas, you could be saying that it was a nice one, but we'll explain why I think it happened on that play. Of course, Urruti played very well. He was well positioned, and I think that right side might suit him a bit better, just because he doesn't have the onus to always track back. If he needs to, he can just hang out there. when he was asked last year to be a striker in a system where he needed to play a bit with his back behind, with his back facing the net. He played behind the ball a bit to try to give time to Nacho Piatti and to give time to Okonkwo and Lapalainen last year to get open. This position as a right wing, you can use his poacher instinct because he doesn't have to play with his back facing the net. He plays more as a neutral electron that is maybe free up to a point, that does have some defensive responsibilities, but not as much as he had in the Rémi Garde system, and maybe not as much of a creative aspect to his role. Him on the right side there, he can just go with his instinct of knowing where the ball's going to bounce. And we've seen it not only in league so far, but in the CONCACAF Champions League also. And I believe that a player like Urruti having that option of being able to be a bit more free and have the instinct to be where he might feel the spaces, to feel where the ball's going to bounce, and use his poacher aspect, which if you go back to Maxi Urruti in his glory days with FC Dallas, guess what? It's a bit of that positioning that he had. A bit free, not necessarily on that same spot as a right winger or as a right attacking midfielder, but more as a striker, but had that freedom to just hang around, be close to the 18-yard box. Now it's on the 18-yard box, but just skewed to the right side. And just go where he sees the positioning open up. Go where he might feel the ball's going to bounce. And yes, lucky bounces. You need to be lucky in life. But so far, Maxi Urruti, 3 goals in Major League Soccer. He has been lucky, and he has created his own luck. And I think that's a very positive aspect for the Montreal Impact going forward. Maxi Urruti being a successful striker. What I mean is a successful striker in Major League Soccer. 15 goals is what you're looking for. So that's like 1 goal every 2.5 games in Major League Soccer. That's what you want. Now, 3 goals in 2 games in Major League Soccer for Maxi Urruti is already a bonus. And it's already a couple games, I would say, in front of your projected goal tally. If you want him to have 15 by the end of the year, you're already a couple of games in advance. So that's great for Urruti. The pressure's a bit gone. And now you can just play. You don't have that monkey on your back. You don't have that pressure of a striker not scoring. You're good. You're good for 10 games now. You're good for, even a slump won't affect that confidence for 4, 5, 6 games. So he's, I think, going to develop an instinct that he had before on that side. And that's maybe the genius of Thierry Henry, to recognize that when he saw Urruti playing in this league and being successful, he had that freedom to be where he needs to be and not always be behind his back behind the play and just holding the ball. No. So I think this suits more a Maxi Urruti, this style of play, at least so far from what we have seen, and it's going to evolve. The Montreal Impact are not always going to play this way. I don't anticipate them always playing with 5 at the back or 3 at the back, depending if you have the ball or not. Ball possession needs to be something addressed, yes, but Montreal did concede late in the game. Was it tiredness? Was it because they had to run after the ball in the first half? That's a question, and we'll see if this here, AGH, Anthony Jackson ML, his start for Montreal, not his best performance. He was asked to play in a way that it might not suit his abilities also. He's a great poacher. He's a great striker. But in this system, as a false 9 responsibility as a Boyan, because you can't change everything in just a couple of hours when you realize that Boyan is not available. So there might be something of putting a square peg in a round hole that doesn't necessarily highlight what he did in this game. But the type of run that he was trying to do were not always what Thierry Henry was asking for. And that was clear and obvious. You don't have to be clever to see that Thierry Henry wasn't happy with Anthony Jackson ML's play. That started in the middle of the first half, and eventually we saw also Thierry Henry send Okonkwo to train, to warm up, to start his training and his warming up, and then he was subbed in the second half. And when Okonkwo came in the second half, we saw how Montreal changed the way they played. They were a lot more dangerous, creating a few chances, creating a panic moment, a bounce here and there, of course, and he created the goal. ZBG, Zachary Bourguillard, was responsible for the first one. The second one, Okonkwo, was very important in that build-up play in the box to give the ball to Urruti, and it fell to him and he finished it. But that was created by Okonkwo's energy. And it's different to come in about the 60th minute with a different type of energy into the game that AGH has to start with, and he has to manage 60 minutes instead of 30. That is something to be said, yes. And there's also something to be said of the randomness of having 7 minutes of extra time in this game. Yes, there was multiple changes on both sides. Both managers used the entirety of their substitution, but 6 minutes is still a lot, and it ended up being 7 with the goal. But that does create the sense of, again, what I was going to say in the beginning of this show is it's a draw on the road in Dallas. Rarely did Montreal ever get anything in Fresco, because guess what? It's not in Dallas proper. Rarely did Montreal get anything at Toyota Stadium, and they get a draw now. 2 goals, a draw. If you score 2 goals most of your games and you're solid defensively, you're going to get your share of points more than often than not. And that's, I think, where it's a missed opportunity. It's 2 lost points maybe, and not just a draw. But we'll get later. Let's continue on the positive side, though. The Montreal Impact are undefeated in 4 games. They haven't lost a game under Thierry Henry yet, either in CONCACAF or in Major League Soccer. And that is very positive. If there's one thing that we expected to be a deficiency for the Montreal Impact in the beginning of this season because of injuries, especially over the last few weeks, was the defense, was the backline. And yeah, it hasn't been pretty. Shutouts are not necessarily a plenty. Clean sheets are not a plenty. But you got 3 draws. Draws either that you get from behind or draws that you or win even. And some of these draws were on the road. You score goals on the road. Let's not forget going to Costa Rica, playing against Saprissa, scoring twice. Going to Fresco in a very different environment. A lot warmer in Fresco than it ever was in Montreal. So that's another positive, which leads to a continuously busy schedule for the Montreal Impact, a 3.5-day turnaround basically to go to play home against CD Olimpia on Tuesday. Considering that you might preventively sat Boyan. It's unfortunate Lapalainen is now unavailable for about 4 weeks, I believe. It was announced earlier this week by the club. So it is, for me, I think, an opportunity missed, yes, but it is still a positive beginning of the season. A lot more than the pundits were saying in the beginning of the season. People told me that I was crazy to put Montreal in 6th spot in my predictions in the Eastern Conference. I still believe my prediction is valid because in Major League Soccer, something weird happens every year. And there's always intangibles. And yeah, it's a cop-out. It's a famous, it's the X Factor. That gives you a chance to win every single game. And that X Factor is Thierry Henry. Players will want to run through wall for the guy. But yeah, they are. But it's also that difference of how he explains things to them. It's a different type of communication. It's not your old style type of communication pathway. The bandwidth is a bit better. He understands that generation more. He played with that generation. If you're talking about the Boyan, he saw grow up and become great players across the world, the generation of younger players also. And now he's seeing younger players evolve and evolve in this world with the reality of today. And how he communicates with these players might be better suited for the players than Rémi Garde was. I'm not going to mention Wilmer Cabrera. We can forget Wilmer Cabrera in the history of the Montreal Impact, I believe. It was a very short blip. That did not necessarily create a lot. Risky Wilmer. I've never seen it still. I'm wondering if it'll ever happen anywhere. Is he coaching? Is he in the USL somewhere? Wondering if Wilmer Cabrera is coaching right now. If you know the answer, tweet at me. I know a lot of things, but I kind of missed this one if Wilmer Cabrera is still on his paid vacation. We'll see. But yeah, so that communication aspect of Thierry Henry with his younger players, with his players now, the way he talked to the media, the way he explained things, it is for us, at least for me, it's eye-opening. It shows you a different way. It's a different way to look at it. It's looking at a problem globally, not just in its own context, but sometimes the context and the global context is necessary. When he explained a couple of days, last week, after the New England game, how Zachary Broguillard was able to be open because they used the left, and Jorge was doing a great job there, and that opens up the right flank. That kind of explanation is just a mirror. It's just a small little tiny speck of a window of what he's actually doing with the rest of his players all the time. So if we're experiencing this to a very small degree as media covering the team in his press conferences and our interaction with Thierry Henry, the way he's trying to better our understanding of what he's doing also, which we have to commend himself. He doesn't have to do so. He could just be belittling if he wants, but he's trying to actually make us understand a bit his point of view in his way, and I commend him for it. So that being said, that just gives you a little window. Imagine being a player and having your coach explain to you, and not only in ways that you understand, showing it to you on the pitch, showing it to you the proper way. We have seen footage of the Montreal Impact in training. I've watched the Montreal train at the Olympic Stadium. Tristan Amour covers the Montreal Impact for Pro Soccer USA. You've seen the most of the training of the Montreal Impact. And you could ask him how it's interesting to see Thierry Henry jump into the action as a training guide. Not just as a talker, but as a shower. So that is tangible. So it might have been the X factor of Thierry Henry effect. They're winning because the coach is popular and he's known and he's a big celebrity and has a big name. So they're winning. It's not only that. I think it's the educator inside Thierry Henry and how he's able to communicate in a fashion that is understandable and tangible in a concrete aspect, showing players literally how to do things, what he's expecting of him. Not too much, not too less, what he's expecting. We've seen dividend. The play of Joe Waterman, the play of a Louis Binks with a Rod Fanny, I think is a great explanation. Great ingredients to make great recipes. Yeah, you do need so. You're trying to make a pizza with shitty flour, bad water, and no salt. You're going to get mushy mush and it's not going to be that great. Mix in some great ingredients and you have a better potential for something delicious. Binks, yeah, he's formed perfectly, you know what I mean? He's trained in a way that he has the abilities needed to execute the role that is asked of him. Joe Waterman, also, which is great for Canadian soccer development. We're seeing him perform at a level that probably even him didn't think was possible right now. But you're confronted to a situation, you either fight or you flight. In sports term, you can say you rise or you fall, you rise or you fail. Joel Waterman is rising to the occasion. The ingredients are good. Ron Fanny is there to guide them around. Binks has the instinct to guide the players around them. It's great. But their confidence level is helped by having Thierry Henry hype him up, teach him. I think communicating his expectations to the players is one of his strong suits as a manager so far. And that might be a really good key in Major League Soccer. I remember a couple of years ago, just give me a second here. Apologies. But I remember a couple of years ago, Tata Martino coming to the Montreal Impact here, coming to the Olympic Stadium. Well, it was Stade Saputo. And Tata Martino was talking about, I wanted to know the role, not only of a manager, but also the role of an educator. And he's like, it's really important in Major League Soccer, more than you think. You cannot assume that all of your players have the same knowledge, the same base of knowledge as a soccer player that you want. So sometimes you have to be a bit patronizing, a bit concrete in what you want. Literally bullet points. I want this, and this from you. I want you to clear the ball. I want you to not put the ball into danger. I'd rather you do an easy pass only than risk loss of possession. So you're clear cut in what you want from your player, and you move on from there. If you're clear, then there's more chance of success from your players. And it's not about what your players can't do. It's what about your players can do. And Tata Martino threw a translator, so some of them was lost in translation. You can go back in the history of this show and find it, I'm sure. But Tata Martino also mentioned that it is one of your job as a manager to use what your players can do and focus on that. And what cannot do is not even relevant to you because they cannot do it. It's not about that. It's to use the players you have and what they can do and put them in a situation for success. Set them up where they have a higher probability of success than not, to the best of your abilities with what you have as a set of players. And most often than not, if you have a good role of educator and you can raise the profile and the confidence level of your players, on top of it, if you're a name like Thierry Henry and you have levels of experience in this game that rarely anyone has, not only on the pitch, off the pitch, with agents, media, he probably has advice for players that we can't even start to comprehend how deep and meaningful the advice that he has for young players can be. So when you have that, you got to use it to the best of his ability. And so far, undefeated in 4. And I think Montreal and Thierry Henry are using it to the best of their ability. That being said, I still think it's a lost opportunity. And it's a bit of a caveat, a cop-out of, oh yeah, they lost on the road. Well, they lost 2 points late in the game. There was a minute left, not even an extra time, and they conceded a panicky moment in the defense where ZBG got caught. Corrales got caught before that, and no one picked up that ball, and someone tried to clear it, and they fell, and they was there for the bounce, and Ondrejek trying to score, but it went off his foot in a bounce, and then it went to the net. You know, a lot of things happened in that minute, and it's unfortunate. Yeah, of course, it's very unfortunate that the Impact lost 2 points, and that's where I think it's a lost 2 points. But it's game effect also. Expectations of Montreal and of a result went really high when Montreal scored their 2 goals. Before that, a 0-0, heck, supporters of Montreal and fans of Montreal would probably been happy if you would told them, yeah, it's going to stay 0-0. Montreal's going to leave Dallas with a point. Would have been fine. The 2 goals by Urruti changed that expectation. And then, it's too bad. It's unfortunate. It is a sour feeling. It's something you don't want to happen too often. We've seen it now a couple of times this season against Saprissa and against Dallas, where 2 goals is not enough, and 2 goals and late in the game, you concede them also. So hopefully it doesn't leave a sour taste in the mouth enough that Montreal decides to change its tactics and to play too defensively. I think the way they've been playing and not just scoring goals, but the way they've scored goals in a replicable manner. Of course, against Dallas this time around, there were bounces and weird goals, but they were creating some space. They need to be a bit more realistic and finish chances, which Ruti has been doing. So they have to continue that aspect in the CONCACAF for Tuesday. But before we continue and move forward in this show and look at Tuesday's show, we're going to have a little word from our sponsors here on the Sports Podcast Network for the next few weeks. We have a special sponsor, and we're really happy to bring you this sponsor with you. It's for the benefit. Who knows what can happen? Everyone can maybe get lucky on a regular basis, but MyBookie is your best bet right now to, I would say, maybe put a couple dollars on soccer, but there's also a lot more to MyBookie here. I'm just going to have it in a second for you. So here it is. March has arrived, and it's time to score big on the nonstop action with MyBookie. MyBookie is the best place for you to cash in on the insane buzzer beaters, huge upset, and white knuckle finishes. They offer live betting on every game, bracket challenges, national championship futures, and more. You can bet on almost anything, including the Democratic nomination, the presidential election, even the name of the next pope. MyBookie caters to all players, whether you research each matchup or you fill out your bracket based on the mascots. MyBookie has something for you. Join now and start winning big today. Sick and tired of getting the runaround when you ask for a payout? MyBookie pays fast when you win. With a decade of experience, great customer service, and hassle-free transactions, why would you bet anywhere else? Visit mybookie.ag and use promo code SPN for 50% deposit bonus. That's promo code SPN. Bet with the biggest, win with the best. Only at MyBookie. Thanks to our sponsor on this week's episode, MyBookie, that you can find at mybookie.ag. They also have great odds on soccer. By the way, if betting on the beautiful game is part of your daily routine, speaking of daily routine, the next game of the Montreal Impact is Tuesday, March 10th at the Olympic Stadium versus CD Olimpia, a club from Honduras. And Montreal has a certain advantage here. Not that great, but it's still pretty good. The fact that they play in a separate stadium for the CONCACAF Champions League than their regular stadium. The regular stadium do not meet CONCACAF Champions League regulations, so they actually play in San Pedro Sula, which always gives me a little bit of PTSD. San Pedro Sula is where the Canadian men's national team lost 8-1 in the qualification process for the World Cup in 2014, which they did not make the Hex, and they did not make the Hex because of that result in San Pedro Sula versus the Honduran national team. But Tuesday, Montreal Impact will play at home versus CD Olimpia. And next Tuesday, the 17th, they will travel down to Honduras and San Pedro Sula. At least it's a neutral site. There'll be some fans, I believe. There weren't a lot in the first game. The first round, when they played Seattle in the round of 16 of the CONCACAF Champions League, there weren't that many fans of CD Olimpia. There was not of Seattle, but I don't think there was any either of CD Olimpia. Maybe some will make the trip to San Pedro Sula from Tegucigalpa. They'll make the trip to San Pedro Sula for the game of the Montreal Impact in San Pedro Sula on the 17th. But Montreal, the 10th, hope I see you at the stadium. It should be a good game, and we're going to dissect a little bit of the roster of CD Olimpia. It's going to give you a little idea of the level of play of CD Olimpia, and I think it's going to be similar as the round of 16 here for Montreal. They are considered the favorite in this matchup, even though they finish this tie on the road. I think the Montreal Impact are favorite against CD Olimpia. But let's get to know CD Olimpia a little bit more before we say goodbye for today. Here's a few players of CD Olimpia, a couple names that jump out at you. We'll start with the Canadian connection. Michael Quirinos and Davy Flores were part of the Whitecaps system. Michael Quirinos actually played for the Whitecaps on the loan 7 games last year, and Davy Flores played mostly for the Whitecaps 2 years ago, all the way till from 2016 and 17 was part of the USL team of the Whitecaps FC 2. Came back to Honduras after the 2016 season, 2017, and from now on continues to play. He played for Motaga and other. Same for Quirinos. Now they are with CD Olimpia. Jerry Bankston, maybe the most known name in Olympia's roster. If you have been following Major League Soccer for a while, he used to be a mainstay with the New England Revolutions for a long time. Not that the Revolutions ever did anything with him, but he was their best player for a long time. And same for Christian Maidana, who was playing for the Houston Dynamo, as you see on your screen right now. Maidana has been a good player in Major League Soccer, also very popular in Houston, and was useful for the Dynamo as a couple of a good season for Houston back in the day. Now, what do they have left? That's the question. There's a couple of good players when we're looking at this team. Ariel Flores is one of their maybe best young midfielders, and also you find a Junior Lacayo that could be dangerous on aerial threat. So those are names to maybe keep an eye on for Tuesday. But famously, team don't travel that well from Honduras. I expect a good result from Montreal on the Olympic Stadium surface on Tuesday night, and that will be the next time that I come to you with a video show and a fresh podcast. By the way, thank you for subscribing. The numbers of Off the Woodworks have really surprised me, by the way, and I'm really happy about your response, and I've decided to put Off the Woodworks free for everyone all the time. Podcast, subscribe, make Off the Woodworks go up the charts. We have a new host now for all the shows of SPN, and we have a new way to do things, and we're starting to appear already in the podcast charts. So if you see SPN, any shows from the network on your podcast apps, by the way, the apps are and the feeds are all individual now. No more cross-pollinating, no too many crossovers. Things are a lot more clear-cut and defined now. Please subscribe to Off the Woodworks. Make it go up the charts. Let's top number 1 in the soccer charts in Canada. That is possible. Over 1,000 listeners of podcasts on Off the Woodworks only since the last couple of days. That has surprised me so much. And it's because of your help and your support that I've decided to continue this venture of covering the Montreal Impact on a weekly basis, free for everyone off the Woodworkx. We thank you for your support. And if you want to support us, by the way, financially, you can go to our Patreon page. You can get exclusive access to premium podcasts like 5 Rings Extra if you like the Montreal 1976 Olympics. We want a series that will be coming back next week that we break down the 76 Olympics in different parts. Next parts will be the Olympic boxing tournament coming just the next couple of, probably around next week. So you can find that on our Patreon page, the Two Side Two Soccer podcast. You can find special interviews, an interview with Paul Stalteri a couple of weeks ago, famously won the Gold Cup in 2000 with Canada. A lot of great stuff on our Patreon page, and also it helps us pay the lights, pay electricity, pay internet, keep this thing going. With your help, we can continue to do more, but this has been Off the Woodworkx. We thank you for your time, for your listening pleasures. Also, if you see any shows created by SPN on Twitter, on Facebook, another way that really helps us is sharing. Reviewing on iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Spotify helps a lot also. All the little ways that you can help us are greatly appreciated. And as always, we'll be back after the game on Tuesday live from the Olympic Stadium. We'll record our nice little YouTube show and we'll upload the podcast for you all to listen to also. But as always, until then, I'm Kevin Laramie, and have a great soccer.